Generate a natural-sounding text-to-speech clip with warm, friendly voice, clear diction, and balanced pacing. Include subtle emphasis on key phrases, appropriate pauses, and light breath sounds. Suitable for product narration, app guides, or social media voiceovers, 20 to 30 seconds. The diplomatic vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere on a Tuesday morning. And Ambassador Trelvok of the Galactic Concorde pressed all four of his hands against the observation window as he watched the blue planet grow larger beneath him. He had visited more than 200 worlds in his long career, but something about this one made his stomach twist with an emotion he could not name. The humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 18 months ago, and already they were making the entire galaxy nervous, not because they were aggressive or because they had powerful weapons. No, the humans made everyone nervous because they seemed to have absolutely no sense of self-preservation whatsoever. Trelvok had read the reports with growing horror. A human colony ship had encountered a void serpent, a creature the size of a small moon that fed on starship reactors. And instead of fleeing like any sane species would do, the humans had tried to take photographs of it. Another group of humans had landed on a planet covered in carnivorous plants and had decided it would make an excellent tourist destination. And just last week, a human scientist had poked a crystalline entity with a stick just to see what would happen. The Galactic Concorde had decided that humanity needed guidance before they accidentally started a war or got themselves eaten by something they thought looked cute. That was why Trelvok was here. But his primary mission was not to teach the humans about galactic customs or trade agreements or the proper way to address the elder races. His primary mission was far more critical. He had to warn them about the Vraxen. The shuttle landed in a city the humans called Geneva, and Trelvok was escorted to a large building where the United Earth Council waited to receive him. The humans were smaller than he had expected, soft and fleshy with no natural armor or claws or venom glands. They smiled at him with their strange flat teeth, and he found himself wondering how this species had ever survived long enough to develop technology. A woman with silver hair stepped forward and extended her hand in the human greeting ritual. Ambassador Trelvok. "Welcome to Earth," she said in a warm voice that did nothing to calm his nerves. "I am Secretary General Morrison, and we are honored to receive the first official representative of the Galactic Concorde." Trelvok shook her hand carefully, trying not to think about how fragile her bones felt. "Thank you, Secretary General," he replied, his translator device converting his words into the human language called English. "I bring greetings from the 4,217 member species of the Concorde, and I carry with me the documents necessary to formalize humanity's membership in our great alliance." The humans seemed pleased by this, and they led him to a large chamber where representatives from all the nations of Earth had gathered. Trelvok spent the next 3 hours explaining galactic law, trade regulations, and the complex web of treaties that kept peace among the stars. The humans listened politely and asked intelligent questions, and Trelvok began to think that perhaps this species was not as hopeless as the reports had suggested. Then he reached the final item on his agenda, and his tentacles began to tremble. "There is one more matter we must discuss," he said, and something in his voice made the room grow quiet. "It concerns the Vraxen." He activated the holographic projector he had brought with him, and a three-dimensional image appeared in the center of the chamber. Several humans gasped. The creature in the image stood nearly 3 meters tall at the shoulder and had 6 powerful legs covered in scales that shifted between purple and black depending on the light. Its head was broad and flat, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern and a mouth filled with teeth designed for tearing through armor. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along its flanks like living lightning. "This is a Vraxen," Trelvok said, his voice barely above a whisper. They are the apex predators of the galaxy. And they are the reason we have the doctrine. He pressed a button, and text appeared beside the image. The Vraxen evolved on Kaloth 9, a death world where everything is designed to kill everything else. They developed a hive intelligence that allows them to coordinate their attacks with perfect precision. And they possess a tactical genius that has allowed them to defeat every enemy they have ever faced before the doctrine was established. The Vraxen destroyed 17 civilizations, not conquered, destroyed. They hunted entire species to extinction for sport. The chamber was completely silent. Now even the humans seemed to understand the gravity of what he was saying. The doctrine of Vraxen was created 8,000 years ago, after the Great Hunt, when the Vraxen killed 90% of the Kilari species in a single galactic month. Trelvok continued, "It is the only agreement the Vraxen have ever honored. And it is the only thing keeping the galaxy safe." He met the eyes of every human in the room. One by one, the doctrine has 3 rules, and they are absolute. First, you must never look a Vraxen directly in the eyes, for they interpret this as a challenge. Second, you must never speak to a Vraxen directly, for they interpret this as a claim of equality. And third, you must never, under any circumstances, touch a Vraxen, for they interpret this as an attack. Secretary General Morrison leaned forward in her chair. "And if someone breaks these rules?" she asked. Trelvok closed all 4 of his eyes. "Then the Vraxen will hunt that person," he said. "And when they are finished with that person, they will hunt everyone that person has ever known. And when they are finished with them, they will hunt everyone on that person's planet. The Vraxen do not forgive. And they do not forget. They simply hunt until nothing remains." The holographic image flickered and changed, showing world after world, reduced to ash and bone. These are the 17 civilizations that learned this lesson the hard way. Trelvok said, "Do not let humanity become the 18th. The humans signed the doctrine that very day. They promised to distribute the information to every human vessel, every colony, every outpost. They assured Trelvok that humanity understood the seriousness of the situation. 3 weeks later, a cargo hauler captain named Marcus Chen landed on Trading Station Omega 7. He had received the briefing about the Vraxen. He had even started reading it, but the document was 200 pages long. And Marcus had a schedule to keep. And surely the important parts would have been at the beginning, right? He grabbed his cargo manifest and headed for Docking Bay 12, completely unaware that a Vraxen hunting pack had arrived at the station just 6 hours earlier, and that their alpha was standing directly between Marcus and his destination. Marcus Chun had been awake for 23 hours straight, and the only thing keeping him functional was the terrible coffee from the station's vending machines. His ship, the Wandering Star, had experienced engine trouble near the Helion system, and he had spent the last 2 days making repairs with nothing but spare parts and creative swearing. Now he was behind schedule. His boss was sending angry messages every hour, and all he wanted was to get his cargo delivered so he could sleep for a week. The corridors of Trading Station Omega 7 were crowded with aliens of every shape and size. Marcus had seen pictures of extraterrestrials during the orientation all new spacers received. But pictures did not prepare a person for the reality of walking past a 7-foot-tall insect or a floating cloud of sentient gas. He kept his eyes on his datapad, checking the route to Docking Bay 12, and tried not to stare at anyone. That was probably why he did not notice the crowd parting ahead of him. That was probably why he did not see the 17 different species pressing themselves against the walls, their eyes wide with terror. That was probably why he walked around the corner and nearly bumped into the largest creature he had ever seen in his life. Marcus stopped and looked up and up some more. The thing blocking the corridor was massive, easily 3 meters tall at the shoulder, with 6 legs as thick as tree trunks and scales that shifted from purple to black, leaving shadows. 4 eyes stared down at him, arranged in a diamond pattern that seemed to glow with inner fire. The creature's mouth was slightly open, revealing rows of teeth that could probably bite through steel behind the massive creature. 5 more of the same species stood in perfect formation, their heads turning to focus on Marcus with synchronized precision that made his skin crawl. The corridor had gone completely silent. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. And somewhere behind him, something hit the floor with a soft thump that might have been a body feigning. He looked at the creature blocking his path. He looked at his datapad showing the route to Docking Bay 12. He looked back at the creature. "Hey, buddy," Marcus said, his voice rough from exhaustion and too much bad coffee. "You mind moving? Got a schedule to keep." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Marcus became aware of a sound rising around him. A chorus of gasps and whispered prayers in languages his translator could not handle. A small purple alien with too many eyes grabbed his arm with trembling hands. "Human," it hissed, its voice shaking with fear. "Do you not know what that is?" "That is a Vraxen." "The Vraxen?" "You have spoken to it directly. You have looked into its eyes. We are all going to die." Marcus frowned and tried to remember if he had read anything about Vraxen in his briefing materials. The word sounded familiar, but his sleep-deprived brain refused to cooperate. "Look, I am sure whatever it is, it can wait," he said, gently pulling his arm free from the purple alien. "I really need to get to my docking bay." The purple alien made a sound like a kettle boiling over and fled down a side corridor. Marcus turned back to the Vraxen, who had not moved a single muscle during the entire exchange. All 4 of its eyes were fixed on him with an intensity that might have been terrifying. If Marcus had the energy to feel terror right now, he mostly felt annoyed. "So," Marcus said, crossing his arms over his chest, "are we going to do this dance all day? Or are you going to let me through? Because I have got to tell you, my boss is already breathing down my neck about this shipment. And I really do not have time for a staring contest." The Vraxen's head lowered slowly until those 4 glowing eyes were level with Marcus's face. He could smell the creature's breath, hot and metallic, and he could see the scars that crisscrossed its scales like a map of 100 battles behind the big one. The other 5 Vraxen shifted their weight, their claws clicking against the metal floor in a rhythm that sounded almost like a countdown. Every other being in the corridor had either fled or pressed themselves so flat against the walls that they might as well have been wallpaper. Marcus was alone, completely alone, facing 6 apex predators that had destroyed 17 civilizations. And he was too tired to care. "Look," he said, and he reached out and patted the Vraxen on the snout like it was an oversized dog. "You are actually kind of cute up close, you know that? Like a big, scaly puppy." The Vraxen went completely still, its 4 eyes blinked. Not in unison, but in a strange pattern that rippled across its face like confusion made visible. The 5 Vraxen behind it exchanged glances that clearly communicated something important. Though Marcus had no idea what anyway, Marcus continued, sliding past the frozen predator and squeezing through the gap between it and the wall. "I am going to just scoot past you here. If that is okay, yeah, just like that. See you around, big guy." And with that, Marcus Chin walked away. He did not run. He did not look back. He just walked down the corridor toward Docking Bay 12, his boots clicking against the metal floor in a steady rhythm that echoed through the stunned silence behind him. The Vraxen Alpha remained frozen in place, its massive brain trying to process what had just happened in 300 cycles of life. Crick's volume had hunted across 40 worlds. He had tasted the fear scent of 1,000 different species. That delicious chemical cocktail that flooded the air whenever prey realized it was about to die. He had never, not once, encountered a creature that produced no fear scent at all. The human had looked into his eyes. The human had spoken to him directly. The human had touched him, and the human had felt nothing but mild annoyance and exhaustion. Crixvol's hive mind hummed with confusion as his packmates shared their thoughts. Is it defective? One asked. Does it not see us? Wondered another. Is this some kind of trap? Suggested a third. Crixvol did not know, but he intended to find out. He turned his massive body toward the direction the human had gone, and his pack fell into formation behind him for the first time in his long life. Crixvol was not hunting. He was curious, and that was far more dangerous than any hunt could ever be. Marcus had just finished securing his cargo containers when he heard the sound of heavy footsteps behind him. He turned around and found the massive Vraxen from the corridor standing at the entrance to his docking bay, all four of its eyes fixed on him with that same strange intensity behind it. The other 5 Vraxen waited in perfect formation. Oh, Marcus said, wiping grease from his hands onto his already dirty jumpsuit. Hey again, big guy, did you need something? Crixvol did not respond. He could not respond, because his 300-cycle-old brain was still trying to understand what was happening. The human was alone in a confined space with 6 apex predators. The human had no weapons, no armor, no means of escape, and the human was speaking to him like they were old friends, meeting at a social gathering. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. Crixvol had spent his entire life at the top of the food chain. Every species in the galaxy feared the Vraxen, and that fear had shaped every interaction his people had ever had with the wider universe. When a Vraxen entered a room, other beings fled. When a Vraxen spoke, other beings trembled. When a Vraxen looked at someone, that someone knew with absolute certainty that death was one wrong move away. But this human treated him like he was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. No, that was not quite right. The human treated him like he was a person. Crixvol did not know what to do with that. You okay there, buddy? Marcus asked, tilting his head to one side. You have been staring at me for like 2 minutes straight. Is that a Vraxen thing, or is there something on my face? One of Crixvol's packmates, a younger female named Shalver, sent a thought through their shared hive mind. The prey is asking about our well-being. She observed. I do not understand. Neither did Crixvol. He found himself taking a step forward, then another, until he was standing directly in front of the human up close. The size difference was even more obvious. Marcus barely reached Crixvol's shoulder, and his soft human body looked like it would tear apart with minimal effort. So, Marcus said, apparently unbothered by the proximity of a creature that could end his life in seconds. I never got your name. I am Marcus. Chun I haul cargo for a company called Stellar Transport, which sounds fancy, but mostly means I spent my life moving boxes from one end of the galaxy to the other. He extended his hand in the human greeting ritual. Crixvol stared at the offered hand. No species had ever offered a Vraxen a greeting before. No species had ever introduced themselves to a Vraxen before. No species had ever treated a Vraxen like an equal. Before, the hive mind buzzed with conflicting emotions. Fear would have made sense. Aggression would have made sense. But this casual friendliness made no sense at all. And yet Crixvol found himself lowering his head until his snout was level with the human's outstretched hand. He still did not know how to respond. But something about this strange creature made him want to try. Crixvol, he said, his voice a deep rumble that made the metal walls vibrate. I am called Crixvol. Marcus's face split into a wide grin. Crixvol, he repeated, stumbling slightly over the unfamiliar sounds. That is a cool name. Very intimidating. I like it. He grabbed Crixvol's snout and shook it gently, as if it were a hand. Nice to meet you, Crixvol. What brings you to Trading Station Omega-7? Business or pleasure? Krixval's packmates exchanged glances that communicated a shared sense of complete bewilderment. The human was engaging in small talk with a Vraxan. "We are hunting," Krixval said, and then immediately wondered why he had. Answered Vraxan did not explain themselves to prey. Vraxan did not make conversation with lesser species. Vraxan certainly did not stand in cargo bays chatting with small squishy creatures who smelled like bad coffee and engine grease. But Marcus just nodded like this was the most normal thing in the world. Hunting, huh? What are you hunting? Is it like a bounty thing or more of a sport thing? I had a cousin who was really into deer hunting back on Earth. Would spend weeks in the woods waiting for the perfect shot. Never really understood the appeal myself. But hey, different strokes for different folks, right? Krixval found himself answering again. And this time he did not even question why. "We hunt the enemies of our people," he said. "Those who violate our territories, those who threaten our hives, those who show us disrespect." He paused, realizing that by every law of Vraxan custom, this human should fall into at least two of those categories. Marcus had looked into his eyes. Marcus had spoken to him directly. Marcus had touched him. Any other Vraxan would have already begun the hunt, but Krixval could not bring himself to view this strange creature as prey. "That sounds stressful," Marcus said, leaning against a cargo container with his arms crossed. "All that hunting and territory defending and stuff. Do you ever get time off? Like, do Vraxan take vacations?" "Vacations," Shalvar repeated through the hive mind. "What is a vacation?" Krixval did not know, but he found himself wanting to find out. "We do not take vacations," he admitted. "We hunt. That is what we do. That is all we do." Marcus frowned at that, and something in his expression made Krixval feel strangely uncomfortable. "That does not sound very healthy," the human said. "Everyone needs a break sometimes. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. You know?" Krixval did not know who Jack was or why work would make him dull. But before he could ask, Marcus pushed himself off the cargo container and stretched his arms above his head. "Tell you what," he said. "I have got about 3 hours before my next jump. And there is a bar on the station that supposedly serves something drinkable. You want to grab a drink with me?" "My treat." The hive mind erupted with confusion. The human was asking a Vraxan to socialize. The human was offering to buy a Vraxan a drink. Human was acting like this was completely normal behavior. Orcivilum should have refused. Should have reminded this foolish creature of its place in the galactic hierarchy. He should have made an example of this human's disrespect instead. He heard his own voice saying something that shocked him to his core. "Yes," Krixval said, "I would like that." And as he followed Marcus Chun out of the docking bay, with his bewildered packmates trailing behind, Krixval realized that something fundamental had changed. He did not know what it was, did not know where it would lead, but for the first time in 300 cycles, he was not thinking about hunting. He was thinking about what a vacation might feel like. 1 galactic year had passed since Marcus Chen had patted a Vraxan on the snout and changed the course of interstellar history. Ambassador Trelvok of the Galactic Concord stood at the entrance to Trading Station Omega-7, his tentacles trembling with a mixture of fear and disbelief as he took in the scene before him. He had come expecting to witness the aftermath of a massacre. He had prepared himself for burned corridors and scattered bones and the terrible silence that followed a Vraxan hunt. Instead, he found a festival. Station's central plaza had been transformed into something that looked like a celebration from a dozen different cultures, all mixed together. Colorful banners hung from the ceiling. Music played from speakers on every corner, and beings of every species mingled together in ways that would have been unthinkable just 1 year ago. And in the middle of it all were the Vraxan Trelldok, watched in stunned silence as a human child climbed onto Krixval's back and shrieked with Laughter as the massive predator carried her in circles around the plaza. Two other Vraxen were playing a game that looked like fetch with a group of human colonists, chasing after a glowing ball and bringing it back with their tails wagging in a way that no Vraxen had ever wagged before. Vraxen Elder was engaged in what appeared to be a passionate debate with a human philosopher, both of them gesturing wildly, as they discussed concepts that Trollvok could not begin to understand. And at a small cafe table near the center of the plaza, Marcus Chen sat across from the largest Vraxen Trollvok had ever seen, the High Matriarch herself, the being who had personally ended 3 civilizations and ruled the Vraxen species with absolute authority for over 1,000 cycles. She was eating something that looked like a pastry, and crumbs had fallen onto her scales. "Ambassador," Marcus called out, waving Trollvok over with a friendly gesture. "Pull up a chair. We have got room for one more." Trollvok approached the table on trembling legs, unable to take his eyes off the High Matriarch. She was even more terrifying in person than she had been in the historical records. Her scales were darker than the void between stars, and her 4 eyes held the wisdom and cruelty of a millennium of conquest. But there was something else in those eyes now, something Trollvok had never seen in a Vraxen before. "Ambassador," the High Matriarch said, her voice a rumble that made the table vibrate, "I am pleased you could join us. We were just discussing the nature of consciousness and whether artificial intelligences can truly be said to think." Trollvok opened his mouth, closed it again, and finally managed to produce a small squeaking sound that might have been words. "High Matriarch," he stammered, "I do not understand. The doctrine was violated. Your laws were broken. Why is everyone still alive?" The High Matriarch turned her ancient gaze toward Marcus, and something in her expression softened in a way that made Trollvok question his grip on reality. "The humans have taught us something the galaxy never could," she said. "We were not monsters because we chose to be. We were monsters because everyone expected us to be for 8,000 years. Every species we encountered treated us with fear and terror. They ran from us. They hid from us. They built their entire societies around avoiding us, and we came to believe that fear was all we could inspire." She paused and looked around the plaza at the Vraxen playing with human children, at the mixed groups of beings from a dozen species, all talking and laughing together. "No one ever simply talked to us," she continued. "No one ever asked us about our thoughts or our feelings or our dreams. No one ever treated us like people. We were weapons. We were monsters. We were the thing that killed in the dark." Her voice dropped to something that was almost a whisper. "We forgot that we could be anything else." Marcus reached out and patted the High Matriarch's massive paw. "It is not your fault," he said gently. "Fear is a powerful thing. It shapes how we see others and how we see ourselves. But you do not have to be defined by what other people expect you to be. You get to choose who you want to become." Trollvok watched this exchange with his mouth hanging open. A human was comforting the High Matriarch of the Vraxena. Human was telling the most dangerous being in the galaxy that it was going to be okay. And the High Matriarch was leaning into the touch like a pet receiving affection from its owner. "The doctrine of Vraxen is hereby dissolved," the High Matriarch announced, her voice carrying across the plaza and silencing the crowd. "For 8,000 years, that doctrine kept the peace by ensuring that no one ever treated us as equals. But peace built on fear is not true peace. It is just waiting for the next war." She rose to her full height, towering over the gathered beings like a mountain of scales and teeth and ancient power. "In its place, I offer a new doctrine," she said. "The doctrine of belly rubs." A ripple of confused laughter spread through the crowd. "From this day forward," the High Matriarch continued, "the Vraxen will seek friendship, not fear. We will build connections, not destroy civilizations. We will learn to be the beings we always could have been. If only someone had given us the chance." She turned to Marcus with an expression that might have been gratitude. And we will never forget the human who saw a monster and chose to see a friend instead. Marcus grinned and stood up from his chair. You are going to make me blush, he said. But seriously, this is amazing. You should be proud of yourselves. This is not an easy thing you are doing. The High Matriarch lowered her head until her eyes were level with Marcus's face. Will you stay with us? She asked, and there was something almost vulnerable in her voice. Will you help us learn to be more than what we were? Marcus reached up and scratched behind her ear. And the most powerful being in the galaxy leaned into the touch with a sound that was almost like purring. Yeah, he said. I think I can do that. Trelvok stood frozen at the edge of the plaza, watching as the Vraxan High Matriarch nuzzled a human cargo hauler like an overgrown pet. He thought about the 17 civilizations that had been destroyed. He thought about the 8,000 years of terror and death. He thought about the simple document that had governed galactic relations for so long, and he realized that the universe had just changed forever, not through war or conquest or grand diplomatic negotiations, but through one tired human who had been too oblivious to be afraid. Trelvok began to laugh. He laughed until his tentacles ached and tears streamed down his face, and when he finally stopped, he looked at Marcus Chun with something like awe. You have done the impossible, he said. You have changed the Vraxan. You have reshaped the galaxy. How does it feel? Marcus shrugged and took a sip of his coffee. Honestly, he said, I could really use a nap. The High Matriarch purred and lowered her massive body to the ground. Then rest. Little friend, she said, we will watch over you. And as Marcus Chan curled up against the warm scales of the most dangerous predator in the galaxy, Trelvok realized that this was just the beginning. The humans had only been in space for 2 years, and they had already turned the monsters into pets. He shuddered to think what they might accomplish next.